All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Friday. It's a free-for-all. That means you can call in. Well, you can always call in. It's not really that much of a difference, except I use most Fridays my Friday free-for-all thumbnail. So there's that, I guess. And I do a little bit differently on many Fridays than usual is revisit stories from earlier in the week. I tend to not do that other days, right? I tend to try to just focus on newer stories, not invariably, but often. And today we'll go back to some of the topics I visited, but we're also going to explore a couple of new ones, at least for this program. It's not brand new news, but the Daniel Penny verdict did come down this week. That was involving the subway rider Daniel Penny, who put in a chokehold a homeless man who was mentally disturbed. And as a result of that chokehold, the man died. Penny was charged with several counts, manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. I did some research to try to understand the difference between criminally negligent homicide and manslaughter. Both of the charges, I think, were appropriate in the circumstances. So I think the prosecutor was, handled it correctly. But I don't still understand the difference between criminally negligent homicide and manslaughter. And I'm a lawyer, so if I have trouble with that, I would assume a lot of other people would too. Not that we lawyers are anything special, but I did get some training in statutory interpretation and distinguishing between various laws, and it's not clear to me how criminally negligent homicide is in any way a distinct crime from manslaughter. But he was acquitted of one charge, and I think the jury deadlocked on the other, and ultimately the cases were dismissed. So we'll talk about that. Was there a miscarriage of justice? It seems that Briahna Joy Gray thinks there was. Her counterpart on her show, Bad Faith, Glenn Greenwald, disagrees. I'll give you my take a little bit later in the program. What I will start with is what I generally do is focus on, the place where things are worst in this world, and that continues to be Gaza as a direct result of the Israeli genocide and the full unwavering support for it by the Biden-Harris administration. And pretty soon it won't be Biden-Harris anymore that I'll be kicking around metaphorically on this program. It'll be Trump, and we'll see about, hopefully Trump will do something. I'm not optimistic. He didn't say he would. He tried to double down on terrible U.S. policies during most of his campaign, although he did reach out very intelligently, actually shrewdly, I should say cannily, to the Palestinian community, which Harris gave such short shrift to. And the result, Trump's the president. Will that lead to anything less horrific, less atrocious, less evil for the people of Gaza? I sadly fear not. The newest death count, I said yesterday that the count for yesterday would be very high because there had already been some strikes that were being reported by the media by Israel on Gaza. And we have the count now up to 44,875. It'll soon exceed 45,000. I was really thinking about how awful it is for the people in Gaza yesterday evening. I was taking a walk with my wife, as we do so frequently. And I just was thinking, it's cold, but we're bundled up, we're warm, we're comfortable, we have a nice, lovely home to go back to. The people in Gaza have nothing. They have just the only thing they might have, and many don't, is their lives. And even if they have their lives, many beloved do not. This is a terrible, terrible crime against humanity that we and Israel are responsible for. And it heartbreaks me every time, breaks my heart every time to think about it. And also there's just so much indifference. It just seems as though people don't care. They'll care, they'll say they care, but it's either them or us. It's either the Palestinians or the Jews. So I'm Jewish, so I'm going to side with my people. I hear that. I just can't understand it. It boggles my mind. A lot of viewers yesterday. It was really hard to see that. Maybe the most I've ever had watching my live stream. It was great to see. Got just one more subscriber though. So I'm going to say to you, hey, if you're new, if you haven't yet subscribed, maybe you're not new, maybe you're an old viewer, but you still haven't subscribed, please do. It helps me a ton. And also click the like, please click the like button as well. Oh, there's my little, there's my little subscribe bell. Although the subscribe should be above me, right? Not below. Maybe we'll do that again just to give you the full flavor of the subscribe and how it's supposed to look. One more time. Hey, I put it above. Yeah, well, there we go. I got to transition it, and I didn't do that. But I think you get the point. I think you get the point. We'll do that correctly on another occasion today. You can see the damage there, that picture taken yesterday. Just one more building that's been destroyed. And the wasteland that Israel is leaving in its wake in Gaza. 40 more deaths in the past 24 hours, and we're getting again close to that 45,000 dead now. And again, there's no respite for these folks. They're constantly beset. Israel just hell bent on mayhem. What is a hero? I'm going to address that next. Just to give you, though, the numbers real quick. 44,875 official count by the health ministry. And you know, we used to hear this over and over. Oh, those numbers are inflated. You can't believe it. It's Hamas that's making them up. And I think everyone recognizes now that the true number of victims of Israeli genocide is far, far higher than this. I don't think you even hear, I don't hear it anyway, any kind of BS about how, they're making stuff up or they're conflating deaths or anything like that. I think it's recognized worldwide now that Israel's slaughter is actually far bloodier, far more reprehensible, far more evil. And numbers are only take you so far. You kill one person and you could go to jail for life, as Luigi Mangione likely will, or at least for many, many years. And you should in most cases. I mean, there obviously are going to be exonerating circumstances in some homicide cases and the like, but generally we recognize that human life is sacrosanct, and you just don't get to take other people's lives absent some type of compelling circumstances, which may or may not have been present in that case involving Daniel Penny. We'll talk about that in a bit. But what Israel's done is they've proven the maxim of Charlie Chaplin and Monsieur Verdoux that numbers sanctify. That if you kill lots and lots, not just 5, 10, 20, he killed in his movie, he played thinly veiled, a serial wife killer from France 20 years earlier, known as a Bluebeard, who had killed maybe 20 women, something like that, and he was guillotined. And in the movie, Chaplin, referring to the just ended World War and the revelations of the Nazi genocide, talked about how nations can kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Also a reference certainly to the atomic bomb. And they get away with it in many, many cases. The Nazis in general did not. Some managed to skate by without death sentences, but many did not. But obviously many other war criminals throughout history have not paid any price for their atrocities. And unfortunately, it appears Israel may get away with their crimes, and so may the U.S. Aiders and abettors of those crimes. 240-242-5646 from Ari in the chat. Just to get a quick shout out. Thanks for your comments. Yes, U.S., UK, EU, NATO, all complicit in that genocide, also in our proxy war against Russia. I would note at least UK has ceased or paused some arms shipments to Israel. The United States, the Harris-Biden administration, can't even be bothered to do that. All right, I flagged this for you. This is part of our free-for-all. What is a hero? I'm going to play a video in a moment from Wednesday where I was, the shot was right where I was, which was, well, actually, I was outside a House, United States House of Representatives meeting room where Secretary of State Blinken, there's one of your war heroes for you, was speaking before Congress, but largely pretty darn friendly, welcoming crowd, despite the partisan nature of the hearing, which was investigating the pullout from Afghanistan and the number of dead there, which was greatly exceeded, I think, what many thought should have been. Maybe over a couple thousand died, and that was being investigated. There's no investigation into our ongoing support for the genocide in Gaza, of course, but when it was American soldiers killed in that pullout from a war where we never, ever, ever should have been, that, of course, gets all manner of media attention and certainly political attention as well. So they're at the hearing, and it was interrupted, and that caused me to question, well, what is a hero? Did the folks who, because I throw around that term quite a bit when I see people standing up to empire, standing up to the war criminals, the genociders. Are they heroes? Is that what makes a hero? I looked up the term, and this is your dictionary.com definition. So let's see, are they the people, we're going to play the video in a second, but just real quick, think about that. When you see this video in a moment, are the people you're going to see, they're not going to be mythological or legendary, and they're not going to necessarily be illustrious warriors, or they're not illustrious warriors, but are they going to show noble qualities or great courage? Because to me, those are very fair, right? That's a fair definition. Somebody who shows noble qualities or great courage. So let me play this video, and I know at least a couple of folks, or one of them here, you see him right there on screen. That's actually Adnan, but we'll see him in a little bit. Let me play this clip for you. Are these people that you're going to see, not the ones who are the focus of the video, but those in the background, are they heroes?
Let's take you live now to Capitol Hill, where the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is testifying before the House Foreign Affairs Committee about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. All right, so let me stop it right there. You can see in that image right there in the back right near the chair, you see somebody holding up a sign. Is that person, in your view, a hero? I'm going to say, are they showing great courage? Let me see if I can zoom in, try to get you a little bit better picture. Are they a hero? Is that someone showing, and there you can see it. I think it says, stop the genocide. You can't quite read it, but I think that's what they're saying. And then underneath, it says Blinken genocide. That's what it says, Blinken genocide, and then underneath code pink. Is that person a hero? Are they showing great courage? Well, let's go back to that video, because I think when we see it, you kind of can get a sense whether they are, when you see what happens to them by the Capitol Police and the response. And then we're going to show some more. That one I had to kind of zoom in on because it was a little bit hard to see. But yeah, genocide, Blinken genocide, code pink. And here we go, back to the video. Disruption. Let's watch.
Disruption of committee proceedings is against the law. Holding up signs or making verbal outbursts during the proceedings.
So you could see that cop in the back right. I actually saw him. He was patrolling the halls quite a bit. The man with the glasses there, back right. You saw him snatching the sign out of the woman's hands very aggressively. I'll go back and do it one more time. Snatching it out, and then you can see him snatching, and then they escort her out where she's arrested. So does that make, was that a heroic act? I'm going to say, yeah, I think it was. 240-242-5646. Let's play some more hero. Yes, it is a word for gyro as well, or gyro or euro, however you want to pronounce it. But we'll go with the American or English word hero. Here we go.
Any disruption will result in a suspension of the proceedings until the Capitol Police can restore order. This includes the raising of hands and other forms of disruption.
Right. And so the thing about the raising of hands is many of the protesters there were holding, this was Wednesday, by the way, in case you're wondering, Wednesday morning at the House building, the Rayburn office building. And I think it's the Ben Franklin hearing room, as a matter of fact. And he says you can't raise your hands. Many of the protesters there had put red paint, red finger paints on their hands, right? I use finger paints because it's totally non-toxic, doesn't cause, it's easily washed off. So they put red paint to symbolize the bloody red hands of Anthony Blinken and us because of him. And you can't do that. You get arrested for that. You saw that woman just getting aggressively manhandled by the police. Let's show another video. I'm not going to show all of it, but the question, are these people who I say they're showing great bravery, right? I mean, you're going to be arrested. That sucks. You're in this room with all these very powerful, influential people. There are police everywhere. The second you say stop, the second you say boo, you're going to be escorted out. You're going to get charged. Now, we don't quite live in a complete dictatorship, tyranny yet. So there's Adnan again, and I believe, very fortunately, after his arrest, he was released, thank goodness. But you're going to get thrown around by those cops, and you got nowhere to go. You're doing it because you know it's the right thing to do.
Our thoughts are with the Gold Star families of the 2,461 American service members, as well as State Department and USAID employees.
Stop killing kids in Gaza! I have young kids. You're a father. I don't know how you can sleep at night when you're killing so many kids in Gaza.
Committee will suspend while the Capitol Police restore order to this committee.
So those folks are showing a heck of a lot more bravery than I would. I don't want to get arrested. I don't want to get pushed around. And I think that's part of the reason why I view them as heroes, because they're doing something that I don't, frankly, have the courage to do. They're doing it for the best of reasons. Now, you might argue, I might argue, but what's the impact? Is it doing any good? And my response to me when I say that, because I do question, I'm like, well, are we helping? Are they helping, right? Was my standing outside that courtroom with other ralliers to say this is wrong? Are we changing anything? And maybe not. But, according to Camus, Dr. Ryu didn't do anything in the plague to stop the plague, but he still was a hero because he tried. He did what little he could do to comfort people, to try to save lives, even if he didn't. He existed. His existence was what mattered. And I agree with that to a significant amount, but I also think we have to be effective if we possibly can. If you don't think they were effective, and I question it, then what should we be doing? What would be effective?
Who are here with us today.
And I just asked that question. I'll play the little more of the clip, last protester I've got in the video. But I asked the question, what would be effective? And then I paused and I went forward with the video because I don't have an answer. I don't know. I wish I had an answer. I don't know what would work. I don't know what we can do to stop the killing, to stop the genocide. I don't accept that this is the democratic process. I don't accept that this is the will of the people. I don't buy that. It's the will of the weapons manufacturers and their bought and paid for corrupt representatives. That's whose will it is. It's the will of the generals, I suppose. And even many of them, I'm sure, get how wrong this is. I don't accept that this is somehow democracy. I don't accept that. In the wasn't the Peloponnesian, was it the Peloponnesian War? I guess it was. Yeah, the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides. He talks about how the Athens Democrats, the voters, the citizens of Athens decided that they were going to execute every man on the island. I think it was of Milos. Every man. It's called the Melian Dialogue. And they debated because the island rebelled against, they were allies, really part of the Athenian Empire at that time. They were occupied, the Athenian army, navy occupied the island of Melos and pushed around the citizens of Melos and said, you have to fight against the Spartans. You have to do what we tell you. You have to man our ships. And the Melos said, we don't want to do that anymore. We're not going to do it. Get away, go away. And they rebelled and pushed, killed a few of the Athenian occupants. And so then there was a debate. They call it the Melian debate. What should we do? And one of the generals or citizens, Cleon, said we should execute every man over 18. We should enslave the women and children. And there was a big debate, and they decided they were going to go along with what Cleon wanted. And then the next day they decided they weren't going to do it. They had already sent a ship with a captain to carry out those orders. They sent the ship over to Milos to kill everybody on the island who was over 18, every male, and then enslave the women, rape them, I guess, and bring them back as slaves and their children. And when the captain got there, the next morning, the Athenian citizens thought a lot about it. They thought, yeah, we can't really do this. That's not right. That's not proportional. And they sent another ship back over after the captain. It got there too late. The captain already arrived, who was supposed to carry out the orders, but he wouldn't do it. He's like, I can't do this. I'm not going to kill everybody on this island. I'm not going to do it. And so that kind of ended it. And they just decided we're just going to kind of let it all go. I guess they punished a few malefactors and then took some reprisals, and that was the end of it. I guess you could argue in a way there was sort of a democracy there because the citizens did vote, and then they thought better of what they, or worse of it, as Thucydides says, and decided they couldn't do it. But we didn't all vote. We didn't have a choice. Who were we going to vote for if we didn't want to support Israel's genocide? There was no one who said, let's not do this. And it wasn't a policy that we all agreed to. Now, of course, you could say in Athens it wasn't democracy either, because only men with property pretty much who could vote. So it wasn't a true democratic, but the people who were voters did vote. In this case, on that specific policy, they debated, what should we do with Milos? And they just said, oh, we'll kill them all. And then they decided not to. But we didn't decide we're going to bomb Gaza. We didn't decide we're going to arm Israel to, fare thee well and to completely destabilize that region. So it's not democracy, and I don't accept that. It's a few bad people who make decisions for everyone else. What can we, what do we, what should we do to stop them? These folks are saying, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to be counted. I'm going to be heard.
Who are here with us today, you're in my thoughts, in my prayers. I wish that Nicole was here with us today. I'm deeply sorry that she's not. I'm also deeply grateful to the dedicated professionals from the State Department, from the Defense Department, from across the government, from civil society, other partners who did so much to support the people of Afghanistan over those 2 decades.
You scum! Blood of your victims will
Committee will come to order.
People will never let you forget.
Committee will suspend.
You've killed hundreds of thousands in your cozy little office.
Order.
You fucking slide bag.
Committee will come to order.
So they showed that on CBS News. They played the audio of him cursing using the F-bomb. That's pretty awesome. I hope it must have gotten out. It was certainly on YouTube. Maybe they bleeped it out. They probably may have bleeped it out. Again, is that a hero? Is he a hero? I don't know what else to call him. I think that's the word, right? So showing extreme bravery and some other definitions, the central figure in an event, period, or movement. So this is a movement to stop genocide, to stop the complete eradication of a group of people, ethnic cleansing. are the people who stood up there and were counted, who braved being arrested, manhandled, pushed around. They're the central figures in that movement without any question. And, object of extreme admiration. Yeah, I have great admiration for the people who did that. So I don't think there's any question that, at least to my way of thinking, they're heroes. You agree? Disagree? 240-242-5646. It is the free-for-all. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe, and please share. I noticed this. There was a video from another YouTuber that was shared in Halitics on Facebook, which you should also, by the way, join if you haven't yet, become part of Halitics. And again, no charge for any of this stuff. It's all free. I love that. I thought it was a great video. I really appreciated it. I noticed that the YouTuber had a small number of subscribers. I think that because they're relatively prominent and known, that number is going to go up very much. But one of the things that helps is when you share. So if you like what I'm doing, and I know some of you really do, and I'm not saying you don't share, but please do. Please share the link far and wide. I would really appreciate that as well if you like what I'm doing. I get a lot of flack for not going after Republicans, for not criticizing Trump, for focusing all my ire on the Democrats. And, I've taken to calling them Republicrats because I don't really think there's much of a difference. But Trump definitely, not that I've had any kind of real expectations for him, but to the extent, I was hoping, well, maybe, because the Gates pick for Justice Department Attorney General, there were some positives there, right? Gates has indicated, on several occasions, he doesn't like big tech. He wants to take on big tech. He wants to break up big tech. He doesn't like monopolies. He gets that there's a climate catastrophe that humans are causing. And I had some optimism, and of course the left torpedoed Gates, because he's a sleazebag. He's a sleazeball. He is. Not like there aren't any Democratic sleazeballs, but he's a Republican sleazeball, no question about it. And the replacement, Pam Bondi, is going to be worse for consumers, going to be worse for the American people. It's, as far as I know, she's not a sexual predator, but the job is not to, is not a referendum on whether you're a sexual predator. It's to enforce the laws of the United States. And I understand the argument, well, how can you enforce the laws of the United States if you yourself violate them? Well, it's a paradox. But on laws that really matter to me, like the environment, like protecting the environment, like prosecuting collusion among monopolistic and oligopolistic actors in our economy, I had more faith in Matt Gaetz than I do in Pam Bondi. And one of the ways that Matt Gaetz showed me, I developed a little bit of confidence in Matt Gaetz, is he spoke in favor of Lina Khan. He worked with Lina Khan to go after big tech in various circumstances. I have no reason to believe, in fact, I have good reason to believe Pam Bondi will not do that if she's, and almost certainly she will be, confirmed. Here is the response from Trump to Lina Khan. And one more point, he's not going to, he went with someone else, a guy named Ferguson. But would he have kept Khan if Gaetz were still in the running? I don't know. Maybe Gaetz would have been whispering in his ear and say, you know what, that Khan's pretty good, and we'll get some points among some of the populace if we keep her. He'd end.
Trump's selection for chairman of the Federal Trade Commission will be a sharp departure from the current chair, Lina Khan. Now, this new person is promising to repeal regulations and stop what he calls a war on mergers. Andrew Ferguson is...
All right, so that's really bad right there, right? A war on mergers. Remember, that's what he calls the current policy of Khan, which is to look very closely at proposed mergers, which can often be very, very harmful, very, very bad for competition, for prices. Prices go up when you have fewer competitors in any particular marketplace. I don't think all mergers should automatically be disqualified, but you look at them closely. Are they going to have a significant deleterious effect on competition? Are they going to lead to higher prices? Are they going to make it reduce the number of people employed in a particular industry? Those are all important factors. This guy, Ferguson, unlike Khan, is predisposed to like mergers, to support them. And you can understand why, because Wall Street loves mergers, because they generally do lead to more profits. And also, business people like them, because if, hey, I worked hard, I built my business up, now it's worth a few $100 million. Yeah, I want to sell out. Hell yeah, I want to get that money put in my pocket.
A current Republican member of the commission, which means there won't have to be a confirmation process on Capitol Hill before he can assume the job in January.
All right, so there it is, this guy Ferguson, and we'll play a little more about him in a little bit. But I want to compare it because remember, he's the guy who doesn't like mergers, or who does like mergers, doesn't like the present policy of Lina Khan here. And she gets feted. I think it's it's going to be by the Young Turks. And maybe they're a little over the top, but still they gave some valuable information. Her latest win. And I think, look, we can always go too far and over extol certain people. What Lina Khan did is really good. Let's play it.
I mean, you've really shaken this place up.
I'm a law enforcer, and in many ways, we're undertaking a deeply conservative project, making sure we're going back to the roots.
So what she did is, what they're talking about, and you can see the headline there, Judge blocks supermarket merger and huge win for the FTC. So two of the largest chains, Albertsons and Kroger, were plotting to merge, and so far, that has been stopped by Khan. That may well change, though. That policy could be reversed. The FTC policy opposing the merger could well be reversed. Probably will be reversed by Ferguson. Doesn't mean it'll happen, though. There's other factors involved besides the FTC. There are other players involved in the effort to stop the merger besides the FTC. But Khan playing an important role.
Of what the FTC is about, the actual text of the laws that Congress created, and making sure we're being faithful to the law on the books and the legal precedent.
I got to say, perfect framing from a badass, the woman you just heard from, Lina Khan, who just won big on behalf of the American people. Now, the largest supermarket merger in American history has just been blocked by a federal judge, thanks to Lina Khan's leadership and tireless efforts as the chair of the Federal Trade Commission.
All right, I'll stop it there. So, obviously, Kasparian, they're giving her huge props. A little bit too much, right? She gets a little too much, and we'll get, Kasparian getting a little too enthusiastic. But I'll tell you why that matters in a little bit, because stopping that merger is important. Khan played a big role in it so far. Hopefully it won't happen. If it doesn't, she'll deserve a lot of the credit, but far from all of it. But why it's important is even if the merger stopped, it is no panacea. Preventing big supermarket chains from merging is important to address inflation, right? That's such a big problem for so many American families, the ever higher cost of groceries. And that's a big problem, obviously, for the American public. This won't solve that problem. But it would help it. Obviously, the more supermarket chains that are competing in a specific area, the more price competition there's going to be. But these big chains face some pretty significant headwinds, and preventing that merger is not going to address that bigger problem, which is the entire industry is in duress. At least the entire, legacy, old school supermarket chains like Kroger and Albertsons, like Safeway, A&P, etc. I don't know if A&P still exists, but we have Giant in our area. they're struggling. And until the industry can be rebuilt in a way that protects workers and consumers, blocking one merger ain't going to do much. Here you go. Kroger-Albertsons merger cannot move forward in Washington State. Judge's ruling comes shortly after decision announcement in FTC case. So it's not just the FTC court that ruled against it. That's big because it means the entire effort was stopped, because Kroger and Albertsons are multi-state companies, multi-state stores. But in Washington State, now, even if the FTC reverses course, in Washington State, there's a ruling that says, no, you can't do it. You can't merge. You're going to have to remain separate entities, separate management, at least in Washington State. Can't go forward. Would be cut too much, would reduce competition to too great a degree. And it's not necessary. It's not essential. And there's a third case where this could also cause the merger not to happen, and that's in Colorado. So a number of different courts are looking at this, the Federal Trade Commission, U.S. District Court, state courts in Colorado, and one in Washington State has already said no. There's too much reduction in competition, and this will be bad for consumers. It's not necessary. We're not going to allow it. So yeah, Lina Khan, props to you. But in the end, this isn't going to address the bigger problem that American public are facing. And the reason I say that, I want to show you why the Washington State court ruled the way it did, which is the merger can't happen. They're concerned if it happens, it would severely limit shopping options, as they saw in Washington State when Albertsons acquired Safeway back in 2015, and that in the end led to another shop in the area, another chain supermarket called Hagen's going bankrupt. And the reason for that is a little confusing to me, but it turns out what their main factor was, they blamed Albertsons. They said they didn't provide us with enough support. They didn't, they were supposed to help us out when they merged with us, and instead they just shut us out completely. A big reason, the new entries into the market, stores that don't pay prevailing union wages, that hire temporary workers, that don't provide benefits, or certainly don't provide sufficient benefits, whether it's, and they cite to this because of what happened to Hagen's, whatever, they couldn't make enough money. A&P going out of business, same reasons. Growing competition from warehouse clubs, Costco, Sam's Club. Those people who work in those stores, they're not unionized. That saves a ton of money for the company. They can charge just a tiny little bit less. They put you out of business, and then they jack up prices. Drug, convenience, and dollar stores. There's another CVS, right? Dollar stores, right? Dollar General. They don't pay tax. They don't pay union wages. They have a cheap, divided workforce that's just trying to survive. And that means that they can undercut the old line grocery chains that at least pay a somewhat fair wage to their employees. Part of the factor that has caused, part of the reason that inflation is such a problem for so many American workers is because wages are stagnant. If wages are rising faster than inflation, then at least for workers, inflation isn't a problem because their real buying power is going up. But the pressure from these Sam's Club and like the warehouse stores, Amazon Fresh, what have you, that does keep prices a little lower than they would otherwise be, but wages are kept even lower, are tamped down even more. So the real buying power of the working person is reduced. This is what we need to address, and this is what the FTC can address. This requires aggressive antitrust litigation. This requires guaranteed health care. Take the burden of Medicare, take the burden of health care off of employers altogether. Make the employers compete to hire people based on wages. That's what we need to do. And neither party is going to go there. All that said, it's a great loss that we're not going to have Lina Khan. She wasn't the solution to the problem, but she was addressing real challenges that working people face in our country. And Trump went in the absolutely wrong direction there. But I can't say I'm surprised. I'm sorry, but that's just what we expect, I guess, right? I mean, that's what that's what most of you expect even more than I do. Next thing you know, he'll be sending our troops into Ukraine. Just one more word. Let's play a little bit more. Why this guy Ferguson is really, in my view, a very, very bad choice.
In his announcement, President-elect Trump said Ferguson would be the most America First and pro-innovation FTC chair in our country's history. Now, Ferguson is seen as a sharp critic of big tech companies such as Google and Amazon. In a pitch deck obtained by the news organization Punchbowl, he promised to go...
All right, so let me stop it there for a sec. So a sharp critic of Google and Amazon. That sounds good, right? We want an FTC commissioner who's prepared to take on these oligarchs, to break them up. The business practices where they're doing everything possible to cut out competition, right? Because that's what they do. That's what Google does. That's what Amazon does with their platforms. Everything they can possibly do to prevent any competitors from arising. I don't want to get into all the details. If you want to call and talk about that, we can. 240-242-5646. But that sounds good if he's a sharp critic.
After quote-unquote collusion on diversity and equity and environmental...
But where's look at that. He's not He's not upset about their colluding on price. Well, they don't collude on prices because they don't have any competition. He's not upset that they set prices, that they do everything they can with their pricing structure and the way that they tie in. They have various, allies or partners, Amazon partners. They tie people in, they lock them to the platform. You can only sell with us. You can't advertise your own business. All that stuff that they do, their anti-compete clauses. That's not the problem as far as Andrew Ferguson is concerned. He's upset because they might all be requiring employees to participate in DEI training, or they're setting aside certain jobs for certain minorities. I don't love that. I don't think that's great. That's not a big deal. That's not a problem for it. It's an issue. That's a political issue. As FTC chair, you should be looking at efforts to restrict competition, efforts to keep prices high and wages low. The trans agenda isn't a problem. It's a little tiny problem, and it's hardly a problem at all when it comes to Amazon. What do you care? Maybe I get it if you have a daughter and she's competing in high school sports and there's a trans athlete that she's loses a space on the team to. Yes, I get you're upset about that. I share that consternation. I understand. Maybe you're worried your daughter could get hurt in competition with a bigger, stronger against this bigger, stronger trans woman. I get it, or a girl. I understand that. I'm not saying that's nothing. I'm not dismissing it. But that's got nothing to do with what an FTC chair's job is. That's not criticizing big tech or taking on these malefactors of corporate greed. And then look at the last, wrote dissent against FTC's effort to ban non-competes. Non-competes is what the FTC should be dealing with. Exactly. They should take those on. Well, if you work for me, if you work for Amazon, you can't leave for 5 years after you leave our organization. Even if we fire you, you can't go to eBay. I understand why Amazon does it, right? You learn secrets, you learn how they price. You go to eBay, you could use that against Amazon. Well, too damn bad. This guy's saying, no, we want big tech to be able to enforce non-compete agreements. He's totally wrong about that. He's the wrong person for this job. He's the right person for Amazon and Google. Sure, let's fight over the trans agenda. Who really cares? I mean, some people care. Trans people will care. People who may view legitimately their own circumstances or their daughter's circumstances as perhaps negatively impacted depending on how certain trans initiatives are implemented, they are affected. It's got nothing to do with the FTC. Or it shouldn't. But that's where Trump's going. And it's harmful to us. It hurts us. 240-242-5646, because it means higher prices, lower wages. It means less competition, less options. It means a tighter stranglehold by corporations, multinationals, billionaire executives over us. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Ari, about Anna's language there. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I try really, really, really hard not to curse. I almost never do on this program or anywhere else. I just, that's not my thing, right? Some people do that. That's not my thing. I'm not saying it can't be funny. There's ads. There's stand-up comics who are very profane, blue, obscene. I think they're funny sometimes. That's just not my thing. From CNN, I mentioned Briahna Joy Gray, Glenn Greenwald. They're going to debate. We'll get to that in just a moment. I want to set the table, though, with this clip. This is from CNN, and they're reporting on the acquittal, right, where a New York City jury, well, you can read it yourself, acquits Daniel Penny in subway chokehold death. Let's play the clip.
Let's bring in David Weinstein, a former state and federal prosecutor, to talk about this. So the manslaughter charge was dismissed. He has now been acquitted of criminal negligence.
I think this was on Tuesday, I believe. It was earlier this week. They just say 11:46 Miami time. I'm not sure then of the exact date, but I'm going to go with Tuesday.
The jury did deliberate for 19 hours on the second-degree manslaughter charge. They deliberated for about an hour on the criminally negligent charge. Just walk us through your reaction to the verdict. Obviously, the manslaughter charge was dismissed, and on the lesser charge, he was acquitted. Give us your reaction to the news.
It doesn't come as a great surprise to me. I don't think you can really separate the 19 hours from the additional 1 hour. They were considering the same facts and the same intent, the recklessness, the reckless disregard, and the negligence when they were deliberating on the higher charge and now came back on the lesser charge. The prosecution felt that by dismissing the second-degree manslaughter charge, they would avoid this compromised verdict type of issue, and it did indeed do.
So let me just stop it. So there were two charges I mentioned earlier. There was Man 2 and criminally negligent homicide. And again, I don't understand the difference. The jury apparently could not convict, and maybe they dismissed the charge on the criminally on the Man 2, which is supposedly the lesser charge, less serious, but they're slightly different elements. But they hadn't yet decided on criminal negligence, so the prosecutor dismissed one of the charges, the lower charge, Man 2, hoping to get a conviction on the criminally negligent charge, and didn't get that either. Got an acquittal on that.
Exactly that. They couldn't reach a verdict on the higher charge, and by coming back today, they decided they really weren't going to reach the verdict the prosecution was looking for on that charge either. So they found that Daniel Penny was not reckless. He did not have any negligence involved with what he was doing, and a lot of that hinged upon the testimony that was heard during the case, whether that chokehold was placed on too long, whether he was defending himself, whether he should have known that his actions would have resulted in the death of this individual. And then there was the conflict in terms of the medical examiner's testimony. What really was the cause of death? And so my reaction is that these jurors deliberated long and hard, couldn't reach a verdict on that manslaughter charge. There was perhaps someone who was now, in hindsight, holding out for that charge and would have found him potentially guilty on that. And then when they reevaluated, reassessed, they came back and they said, you know what? We couldn't find him on that higher charge. There was an element, again, of recklessness in the manslaughter charge, and we can't find it here either. So there needs to be an acquittal.
Yeah, so he's saying basically what I said too, is there's really not a lot of difference between the two, criminal negligence and man two. We can't really see a difference, so we're not going to, we can't convict on one, we're not going to convict on the other. I think that makes sense. I understand it. If you heard what that guy said, he was a prosecutor. I wasn't in the jury. I don't know how I would have voted. What I'm saying is there seems like there's evidence that justifies the acquittal for sure. Now, there also is evidence, I believe, that justified bringing the charges. And if he had been convicted, okay, the jury heard all the evidence. I don't think this seems to me like you could argue there's any real miscarriage of justice. I know people are saying, well, this man was killed. It was wrong. He shouldn't have been killed. And I don't disagree with that. But I can't look at what happened and say that the man who held him in that position for so long should definitely have been convicted. And more so than that, I understand why it happened. So I want to go through these charges real quick, and then I'm going to play the debate between Briahna Joy Gray and Glenn Greenwald. A little bit of it, which went on for 2 hours, was kind of ridiculous how long they argued it. But first I want to just show you the charges. So he was not charged. Penny was not charged with man one. He was, and rightly so, because one element of manslaughter one is you have to have intent to cause serious physical injury to another person. And I guess they just felt they couldn't prove it. Now, you might assume it because he did hold him on that floor of that subway for a long time. But he, explained the Penny why he did it. And I guess they felt that they could not prove his intent was to cause. He was deliberately trying to hurt that man. That's what they couldn't prove, they felt. So then you look at manslaughter two. You don't have to prove intent. You have to prove recklessness. Was he being reckless? And again, there was a lot of evidence to that. Well, I wanted to protect the other people in the subway. I was afraid for them. That's why I did it. It wasn't recklessness. I was concerned if I didn't hold him as tightly as I did, he could get away. He was big and strong. I could feel that. So it wasn't reckless. That was the argument that Penny made. And it persuaded enough of the jury that they couldn't convict him for that particular charge, man, too. Now, I don't really get criminally negligent homicide. I don't know what the difference is. You're guilty of criminally negligent homicide if you cause the death of another person with criminal negligence. So then what is criminal negligence? And what that comes down to, when you fail to perceive a substantial and unjustifiable risk that death could occur based on your actions. So that sounds awful much like recklessness, right? And that's what the legal expert was saying. Well, you asked us about man two. Man two says you have to act recklessly. A majority of us did not so conclude. We hung on that. One person apparently wanted to convict. The prosecutor threw that charge out. Then when we can consider the second charge, we'd already considered the first. We have to decide, was there a substantial and unjustifiable risk that Daniel Penny took with regard to the life of Jordan Neely when he held him on the floor of that subway for 5 minutes in a chokehold. And it sounds, when you describe it like that, yeah, he was taking a substantial and unjustifiable risk. But again, Penny had, and he didn't testify. He did not testify at all. But there were, witnesses that did testify. And they said this guy, Neely, came on the subway. He was erratic. He was throwing things around. He said he was prepared to go to jail for life. He was a scary dude, apparently. At least that's how he was experienced. So to view this as some miscarriage of justice, I find hard to swallow. I'm not saying Penny was right, but I'm also saying that you have a very high burden of proof to convict somebody. Put them in jail. So more from CNN, just to go through this. And I bring it up because ultimately I think it's very, very relevant to compare and contrast the reaction of many people to this verdict, which was by and large, I think, a yawn. I know Black Lives Matter are very upset, but most people not viewing it as wrong. And the right-wing media taking and running with it and saying this was the right thing. He never should have been charged in the first place. No, it was okay to charge him. You don't hold somebody in that position for that long. Apparently, there were people in the subway who were saying, let him go. You're going to kill him. Apparently, someone said that. I'm not sure. But according to Penny, who did not testify, Neely was strong, and he was worried if he let him go, he would get up and attack someone else. He didn't know how long, and he also was hoping police would come, and the police didn't come. Police never came. So that's what Penny said. Now, what witnesses said during the trial, people, now not Penny because he didn't testify, but it's no question that this guy was threatening. He said, according to several witnesses, he was willing to go to jail for life. And again, he was throwing things around. And I can understand why Penny felt, maybe I better restrain this guy before he gets a head of steam up and starts attack somebody. I understand that. Now, Briahna Joy Gray apparently doesn't, and that's fine. That's why you have a trial. You hear all the evidence. You hear both sides. It's a close case. Let's go back to, let's show this because I want you to hear this discussion because to me, it's what's really relevant is different perceptions. I don't view this as a miscarriage of justice. Some may say there is. And for those of you, you'll probably agree with what Gray says here, but I want to go through it a little bit with some detail because I also think it's very instructive why Democrats lose and why some progressives, even when they embrace true progressive economic policies, economic justice may turn off some voters.
Go ahead. I didn't want to be in the position where I'm like I said, I don't necessarily think the not guilty verdict is just. It's just based on what.
By the way, you get from the way they're arguing, the way she's stepping in and they're trying to talk over each other a little bit. Obviously, it's very heated. It's passionate. I understand that. Let me go back just a little bit and get a little more here. Let's play it one more time from the start, and then we'll go through it.
Think of it anywhere else, I'd rather be.
Well, it happened in Manhattan. That's not some unfair mulligan. If you murder someone in Manhattan,
I'm just saying
if you homicide someone in Manhattan.
Right, but I'm just saying this is what didn't happen in Orange County or like in the villages in Florida. This happened in one of the most left-wing liberal places in all of.
I want to get to this.
Go ahead. I didn't want to be in the position where I'm like I said, I don't necessarily think the not guilty verdict is just. It's just based on what I know. I think the maximalist condemnation here of saying, oh, he got away with it because he's a privileged white guy and black lives aren't valued.
I didn't say any of those things.
You referred to the Black Lives Matter.
He's a privileged white guy. No, I didn't say a thing about his privilege. I was talking about Jordan Neely's obvious lack of privilege. I didn't say you don't have to be privileged to not be homeless, and you don't have to be privileged to be white and have more empathy cast upon you in a criminal justice system.
The context for the discussion was that powerful people get away with things in the.
Well, let me stop it right there for a sec. So she's kind of backing away, certainly not that she ever occupied it, but the position of many, I think, Black Lives Matter activists and the anti-racism people, those who argue structural racism, and they've been to a significant degree, I think, actually discredited, like the Ibram X. Kendi, that if you're white, you are privileged, period. And she says, no. That's not the case. You're not necessarily privileged if you're white. But then she's going to explain why she does view Penny at least relatively privileged. And again, I have a problem with that because I don't think privilege is a relative thing. Privilege is you have more than you should have. You have more. It's not that you have more than somebody else, because there's so many people who have nothing. And having something doesn't make you privileged. Having more than you should have is what makes you privileged. And again, I'm with everyone has enough and no one has too much. So let's hear Briahna Joy Gray explain her take on why Penny is, if not privileged, relatively privileged.
Powerful. Of course, someone who has a home and a roof over their head and a salary and no mental illness has more power in that dynamic than the homeless guy who's having
more powerful than a homeless.
Right. So that's where I think I just don't see how that's a defensible statement. In that situation, it's far from clear to me that the homeless man, Jordan Neely, had more power than Daniel Penny. You could look at it the other way around. Daniel Penny had something to lose. And Daniel Penny is rational, is coherent. You have somebody on the subway who's erratic, who has nothing to lose, who's violent, potentially violent anyway, we don't know. In a way, he is in a position where he is more privileged and that he could act violently, and he doesn't care. He's not seeing any consequences for his actions. Daniel Penny restrained this man. I'm not saying he was right to. I understand the reasons therefore. And he put himself at grave risk of spending many years in jail by doing that. That's not privileged. He wasn't in that encounter privileged. So I just don't agree with her framing. He shouldn't have been in that position. The problem is that man, Daniel Penny, shouldn't have even been on the subway at all. He needed to be in an environment where he was protected from, he wouldn't hurt others, and he was protected from doing harm to himself or putting others at risk. Or if he's on the subway, there needs to be better security on those trains. But that's costs money, right? Hiring police, hiring metro police, hiring subway police costs money.
I feel as though the reality of our legal system is preempting the moral argument in the Neely Penny case and is being used as an example for why it in fact is moral, because it is creating certain incentives that you think are good and I frankly think are bad.
Well, so she's saying that the law gave an incentive to Daniel Penny to kill Jordan Neely. I don't see any incentive. We went through the law. I don't know how it's giving any incentive to Daniel Penny, but she says that. And just because they're going to bring up the killing by Luigi Mangione of the healthcare CEO, that the law is very clear. You can't shoot someone in broad daylight on the street, or it wasn't broad daylight. You can't just go up to somebody, put a gun behind their head and fire. But that's not the same circumstances. Those aren't the same case. Those are very, very different fact scenarios.
To create an incentive where you kill homeless people.
So she's saying the law is creating, let me play it again.
I feel as though the reality of our legal system is preempting the moral argument in the Neely Penny case and is being used as an example for why it in fact is moral, because it is creating certain incentives that you think are good and I frankly think are bad. I think it's bad to create an incentive where you kill homeless people.
How she got from that case that there is an incentive in the law to kill homeless people, it's just not there. It's just not there. But she's extrapolating from the jury verdict where the man who did kill a mentally ill homeless person, was acquitted. And she's saying from that fact pattern, therefore, that means there was an incentive, that there's an incentive to kill him. But it's not the case at all. What really happened is somebody who's mentally ill for who knows what reason isn't getting treatment they need, they deserve, they should be getting, doesn't have a place to stay at night, and the police and authorities aren't protecting average, everyday, unprivileged New Yorkers who are on the subway, not in limos, not taking Ubers, not riding, in some sort of affluent circumstances, but just going underground in dirty, smelly, often unpleasant circumstances to go from one place to another. So they're also being victimized. And that's what she doesn't get. That's where she misses the boat. And that's why there wasn't sympathy. That's why there's less sympathy for Jordan Neely, because he was, if not a predator, I wouldn't call him a predator. He didn't steal, but he was intimidating average people, everyday people. Normies is a term they like to use. He was intimidating them. He made life a little less pleasant for a lot of New Yorkers, and their lives aren't so pleasant to begin with. That's why there's not a lot of sympathy for him, and I don't know why she doesn't get that.
To cause there to be an enormous amount of sympathy for Luigi, despite the law being infinitely more clear in that scenario. And that's really interesting.
So she's saying, the killer of the healthcare CEO is a sympathetic figure. People are like, they feel bad for him. They like him. They want him to get off. And of course, that's true. And she's saying, I don't understand. He clearly broke the law. It's clear he shouldn't have done this. And yet people feel very sympathetic to him. Well, because people think the law is wrong. The law against murder, it's not that law. It's the law that allows this healthcare this tyrant, this soulless avatar of capitalism to get inordinately rich by denying care to people who need it, by killing people. That's where the law is wrong. That's why people don't really care about the law against homicide, first-degree murder, which this clearly was in the case of Brian Thompson.
One, it does say a lot about how many people have been so grievously harmed by the private health insurance industry. But I think it also does say something about, as much as people can relate to that, how little they can relate to the experience of Jordan Neely.
All right. Well, of course, most people don't suffer the kind of mental illness that Jordan Neely does. And they also are afraid of Jordan Neely. Just as that healthcare CEO's actions have harmed many, many Americans, so has Jordan Neely, by his actions, intimidated and made life a little more challenging, a little more difficult, a little more frightening for many Americans. So I don't see why she doesn't get it. It seems to me these are exactly analogous. People felt for Daniel Penny. He was acquitted. The jury listened and watched the evidence, and they heard what the police had to say. They heard what the coroner had to say. They heard what the witnesses on the subway all had to say. And they said to themselves, Daniel Penny was acting in a way that was taking on somebody who makes life less pleasant, more challenging, more difficult for many New Yorkers. Not privileged, not rich. And they're saying exactly the same thing about Luigi Mangione. Just like Daniel Penny went after somebody who, if he's not really a predator, he's somebody who reduces the quality of our life. Well, that's what Luigi did too. He went after somebody who gets rich off of us, off of our sickness, off of our illness, who takes advantage of us. I don't know why she doesn't get that. It seems so clear to me. If we want to win on the left, if we want to win as progressives, we can't say to people, You're just going to have to suck it up and suffer when somebody on the subway is intimidating and threatening. We have to address it. Now, the way to address it is not to put average, everyday people in a situation where they feel, with some reason, as the jury found, that they may have to restrain this person physically. They may actually put them in a chokehold, which we can regret and say it's wrong. But they shouldn't be in that situation in the first place. We should have the resources. We should have the money available. We should have the place for those folks to go. And we also have to say, you're not going to be denied health care if you're sick. You're not going to be put in a position where it's either a medical bankruptcy or death. If Briahna Joy Gray is serious about having sympathy for that victim, Jordan Neely, and I have sympathy for him, for sure, and his family, then you got to have sympathy for the people that Jordan Neely was intimidating. And that's where she seems to only demand that people empathize with Neely, but he's really outside of most people's experience as a person. And it's hard to have sympathy for somebody and empathy for somebody who's making your life a little bit less, who's making your life unpleasant in that moment, who's scaring you, who's intimidating you. Getting Israelis to be sympathetic to Palestine is very, very tough, because what the Israeli military and what the government there has done and what the U.S. government has done is made people think that average, everyday Palestinians are making their lives are scary, are violent, are going to hurt them. That's not true. And to the extent it is true, it's true because of what Israel's done to Palestine. But it's not fair. It is fair to say to the Israeli citizen, the Israeli government, the Israeli military, you got to stop it. You're oppressing, you're persecuting. And I know you're scared, but the reason you're in danger, if you are in danger, is because of what you've done. But that's not really fair to say to the average, everyday, hardworking New Yorker who's on the subway, the strap hanger. They're not responsible, except in the most attenuated way, for Jordan Neely. Brian Thompson, the billionaire class, the elites, they're responsible for Brian. They're responsible for Jordan Neely. And they've said, we're going to let him prey on you. We're going to let him scare you. We're going to make sure that you, as part of the 99%, are going to direct your anger, your animus towards another member of the 99%, not against us if we can help it. Briahna Joy Gray needs to accept that. She needs to say, okay, well, we need to protect working class people from other people who may be even worse off, maybe even lower on the totem pole. We've got to protect them. And one way we do that is we guarantee that all have enough and none have too much. All right, that's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for this week. I'll be back Monday. It's an Arlen Monday. Don't forget, please click like, please click subscribe. Please let everyone know about what we're doing here at Halitics. Don't forget, you can get more information 24/7, hopefully, at Facebook on Halitics or on Halitics at Facebook or something like that. I don't know. I'll be back.